Welcome to the Visibility Project podcast.
Welcome to the Visibility Project podcast.
Welcome to the Visibility Project podcast.
Started by a group of citizens in a small Michigan town with a like-minded goal
of increasing the visibility
of the unseen and unheard populations in our community.
Our guests will share stories and insights
with the goal of increasing our awareness and knowledge
of various aspects of diversity and equity
to create a more connected, empathetic, and inclusive community.
So, let's get to work.
Let's get to work.
So let's get to work.
So let's get to work.
Let's get to work.
Welcome back to the Visibility Project podcast. I'm your host, Jeremiah Lee. And in this episode, it's actually a little bit of a special episode. We're actually going to be transitioning to our new host, Amy Phoenix, who's going to be joining me in this episode. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Jeremiah. I'm glad to be here.
I'm very excited for you to take over the role as host. So I have, been the host since really we started the podcast over 2 years ago, and I've learned so much with our listeners and throughout this experience. But I have moved across the country and it's making it a little bit more difficult because we are based in Midland, Michigan, right? So a lot of our stories, a lot of our guests are there. So it's a great fit. And I know that the podcast is in really capable hands with Amy and our whole team at the Visibility Project podcast. So really excited to have you on this one. And we're going to kind of tag team this episode today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself, Amy, before we get started and introduce our guest officially today.
Okay, and we are glad to be able to carry the torch that you have passed along the way here. And me coming into the host position here is really because I am a longtime Midland resident. I am a mom and a business owner here, and I have a real passion for the sacred holding of stories. And so we hope that we can continue these efforts in the way that they were intended and be able to support people in our community and sharing and connecting.
Absolutely. And I know you've even been a guest of the podcast itself before, so you've been around it for a very long time. I'm so excited to have you join us. So
thank you so much.
In today's episode today, it's an exciting one. Today's episode will be joined by Erin Falkowski and Rob Worsley, who will be discussing incarceration and support for former offenders.
Rob Worsley is the founder and executive director of Midland Community Former Offenders Advocacy and Rehabilitation, also known as MCFOAR. MCFOAR is a faith-based assistance agency dedicated to assisting former offenders in the Midland community with transitioning back into our community from Midland County Jail and our state prison system. MCFOAR has been in existence since 2013 and has had a great impact on reducing our community recidivism rate, as well as giving clients their best chance to change their lives and become contributing, law-abiding, successful members of our community.
Erin Falkowski grew up in Midland, Michigan. He spent the last 4 years working for the 1016 Recovery Network and has been clean and sober for 6 years. He started going to MCFOAR immediately after returning home from a residential drug and alcohol treatment program in Petoskey, Michigan. Upon his return, Rob and Gerry at MCFOAR helped him spiritually, emotionally, and financially to integrate back into the community to become the functioning and contributing member of society that he is today.
Thank you, Rob and Erin, for being here with us today. We are looking forward to hearing your stories, and we'd like to begin with some introductions. So inviting each one of you to tell us more about yourself, your background, your work, your family, where you're from, just what helps you get up each day, each morning.
Well, my name's Aaron. I'm from Midland, Michigan. I have 2 children. I'm a father. I have not seen one of my children, my son, in some years, mostly due to probably my lifestyle from back in the day. Like I said, I'm from Midland. I don't do a whole lot. I go to work, come home, pay my bills, make sure everything's all right in my life, and just keep moving forward every day. Oh, I reside with my mother, a sister, and a nephew. So, and I'm there by choice. I mean, I could leave, but I kind of don't want to. I like to be there to help my family out. So, yeah, that's about it.
Hi, I'm Rob Worsley. I am the Director of Midland Community Former Offenders Advocacy and Rehabilitation. I founded this agency in 2013, and I've been the executive director since I founded it. It just made sense for me to lead it. So prior to that, I was working with parolees coming back to our community from the state prison system. I was a resource specialist. I had an office in Midland, and I oversaw an office in Bay County. I did that for like 4.5 years until the funding was taken back from the community. The governor decided to put that money into the institution. So I had approximately 100 active parolees at that time. I wasn't working with people coming out of jail, just active parolees. And God inspired me to have this program and to take care of those that I've been taking care of. And so since that time, we've been raising our own funding. We have no pay for service programs. Everything is done for the clients through the funding that we receive through the community. Prior to my, and this is the most satisfying thing I've ever done in my life. I'm a retired police officer. I was a jail administrator in Midland County Sheriff's Office. Prior to that, I was in the 82nd Airborne Division of the U.S. Army for 3 years. I'm a county resident. I've been here all my life other than when I was in the service. I have 3 children. I have 9 grandchildren. My wife is Julie. We don't have any children together. We reside in the city of Midland. She's a lady of God. We have a great relationship, and she is my guardrail and my she keeps me in line, and I greatly appreciate her. And this program, this agency that is a one-stop case management for former offenders, is a blessing that I will always be grateful for.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob. And before we go into more depth, I do have some questions that I'd like to ask you in regards to your heart in this work. But before we do, what are some terms or phrases that we should be using and ones we should avoid on this topic? Is there anything that we need to be aware of as we go along?
Yeah, we don't say those people or those guys. They're God's creation, or they're as important as any of us and anyone else in this world. We don't call them convicts. We don't call them addicts. Every person that comes into this office is an opportunity for us to speak of the good news that God has for them. And we know that that's the thing that Rob Worsley doesn't fix people. We have resources, we give direction, we try to help people, but the fix comes from God. And that's probably about it. Aaron is my full respect, and I know that he respects me, and that's all we expect from the people that come in here. We're here to help them to help themselves, and every one of them is an opportunity for us. We don't look at it as a burden, and we avoid, you were in prison or you were in jail. We're trying to get past that and move forward so they can have a better life than they've had in the past. So there isn't a lot you need to be concerned about. It's just, you'll hear people say, well, those people or them people or whatever, and that's not how we address them. They're individuals and they are due respect, and that's how we treat them.
Absolutely. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that too, and your basis for how you work with people. I have a curiosity. Why do you feel it is so important to you to help those who have experienced incarceration in their return to the community?
Well, one of the things that I tell people is that put in the wrong circumstance at the right time, we could be in opposite seats. I am not a saint. I am a child of God, but I have inequities in my life also. And I grew up in a environment that many of our clients grew up in. Fortunately for me, after I was in the service and I got some direction in my life, I ended up working in the sheriff's office, which gave me further direction. I've wore a uniform for many, many years, and I used to dress in a suit every day. but it was creating a separation between me and the clients. And I found that that wasn't a good situation. I want to be alongside of them, not elevated above them, because I don't believe I am, and we don't treat people like that. I can tell you that when I was a police officer, I wasn't someone who abused people or took advantage of people because of my position, or created charges that weren't actual or factual. So I've always had a heart for people who are less fortunate. If there was something I could do to avoid taking them to jail, if there was a community service or something in the county that would assist them, that's what I would do. And honestly, people who I engaged with in the community for 27 years of law enforcement, they know when it's time to go to jail. They know if you treat them with respect and stuff, they know what the issue is, and they're not gonna push back. I probably got a little bit away from what you asked me. I have had this heart for offenders since I started in the sheriff's office. And as towards the end of my career, it became more of a bigger part of my life. And as a jail administrator, I became very compassionate and understanding of those people that were incarcerated. I worked in 2 prisons. I did prisoner reentry for 4.5 years, and God has changed my heart. You know, a lot of people say, how'd you transition from locking people up to helping people? That came from God. And I give him all the praise and glory for that. And as I said earlier, this isn't what I do, this is who I am. I don't just do this in this office. I take it with me every day. I take it home with me. I take it out in the community. I never shy away from clients that we have. When I see them in public, I always go up to them. They come up to me. We have a great relationship. And I think that started when I was a police officer, and it's just grown to be more of a compassion, more of a forgiving, more of a softer, gentler approach with people. And I'm inspired to do that every day. You know, I'm 64, soon to be 65 years old. I've been working with offenders for 43 years, and I wouldn't rather be doing anything than what I'm doing now.
All right, thank you so much. I'm really hearing your commitment and that interchange that you've experienced, and your approach to supporting people who are in a time where they need that support. So thank you. And yeah, Aaron, we would love to hear your story related to your experiences with arrest and incarceration, whatever you're comfortable sharing with us.
Okay, absolutely. Well, I guess much like Rob said, you know, probably the neighborhood he grew up in probably wasn't no different than mine. I believe I'm a product of my environment. I absolutely, at a young age, I was introduced to drugs in my neighborhood, you know, and so I guess, I mean, it was nothing really hard or anything like that, I guess. But it kind of just went lightly for some years when I was younger, right up into middle school, you know, high school. I myself, like, for instance, I often think about this. I very well could have been a colleague of Rob's. I myself, when I was 18, I tested for the Navy. I was accepted. I passed all their tests. All I had to do was go take a physical. My cousin was my recruiter, you know, but I was in love with a girl. She was in love with me, and I chose not to, right? Yeah. But I guess making just not good life choices after that point. People I surrounded myself with and things like that. Now, my drug use escalated after that throughout the years, and right up into the point to where it got me into a lot of trouble. Actually, this is how I got introduced to the MCFOAR Foundation. Was Gerry would come to the jail. I always knew who Rob was, and the foundation, I've heard of it and stuff like that. But I really never had no need to go that way until after I got arrested. And Gerry would come to the jail and see all of us. And when I got out of jail, that's the first place I went was to Rob's and Gerry's building here, and started, they helped me immensely. But I guess I hadn't gotten into a whole lot of trouble until I was like 49 years old. I started doing the chemical drugs, and that's when it really, really affected my life. And I ended up getting arrested in 2015 on methamphetamine charges. And I got out of jail just briefly, and probably about 2 months later, I was arrested again for the same thing. I was putting myself in situation and places and being around people that were doing that, and that I had no business probably being around. They probably had no business being around me. I wasn't exactly a role model myself. So after I got arrested in 2016, I sat 8 months in jail, went to residential treatment for another 3 months. When I got out of the residential treatment program, I got put into the drug court program in Midland, enrolled into the 1016, and I spent about the next 20 months there doing that and working little side jobs too, just to pay some bills. But I ended up, when I graduated the drug court program and the 1016, 3 months after the program, the 1016 hired me as a recovery coach. So I've been there since about 2018. It's been quite a journey. I don't know where I'd be without Rob and Gerry, and the program. It's really changed my life around. Like I said, I believe, we end up being a product of our environment unintentionally. So yeah, I'm living a much better life today.
If I could intercede here, Aaron, tell her what you told the police officer after your arrest when you saw him again.
Yeah. So when I was arrested, they literally woke me up out of a sleep. You don't sleep a whole lot when you're doing that kind of drug. So they arrested me. I went to jail, went for arraignment. They take us over from the jailhouse to the courthouse. Well, we were in the elevator heading up to arraignment, and the two police officers, they were talking, and there was probably about 5 other inmates plus me, and then the two police officers. And I looked at the one police officer and I said, "Excuse me," I said, "your voice sounds really familiar." I said, "Do I know you from somewhere?" And he looked at me, he said, "Aaron, I'm the one that arrested you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he almost was apologetic in a way, and I told him, I said, "You know what?" I said, you didn't come and arrest me. You come and saved my life that day." And he looked at me, he said, "You really feel that way?" And I said, "Absolutely," because that's what they did. I mean, I cried in back of the police car, because I knew it was finally over, this horrible journey I'd been on. So, and I knew that, when I got to jail, hey, I'd get myself a book, I'd get my cell, and then whatever happened from there, I didn't care. But yeah, he just couldn't believe that, that I had said that. And then I was honest about it. They came and saved my life that day. And I'll always be grateful.
Yeah. Super powerful perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is really powerful, Aaron. I think we're gonna change roles here for a little bit. We're gonna go back and forth a little bit today. So I'm actually gonna dig in deeper with you a little bit more, Aaron, if that's all right with you.
Yeah.
I'd love to know a little bit more about your experiences after that. So now you've had this experience. Now you've had a life-altering experience that's for the better right now that you've been arrested, and you're starting to change your perspective, it sounds like, right? Am I hearing that right? That now that
Absolutely. Yeah.
so can I talk about your time being, for lack of a better word, locked up then? Can you tell me maybe what were some of the hardest things for you about being incarcerated during this time? Can you speak to that maybe? What was difficult for you? Maybe what was the impact on your family or things like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the hardest thing about being incarcerated was, so in 2015, let's see. Okay, so my father got really sick in 2015, just out of the blue, right? Never sick a day in his life. And I was actively using then. And I remember he would, they brought him home from the hospital. We knew he was dying. And I remember him saying, well, hey, you should just sit down and talk with me. So I would tell him, well, I will, I'll be back. I got to run and do something. I never gave this guy the time of day, because I was an active addict. When I was in jail the first time, my father, he did pass away. And I remember going to jail, and about a month in jail, I'd realized that, wow, my dad was really gone. So that was really tough, and yeah. So I had to face that fact, right? And I hadn't seen my daughter in some years because of my active addiction. And I knew it was hard on my mom, my sister and them. And even then, so that was tough. But like I said, when I got out of jail in 2015, I was only out for a couple months, and then I was back in for like another 8 months. So I did about 16 months almost back to back in county jail. The second time I went in, the impact, it was hard. My mother, I was very worried about my mother. It's like, she's elderly. A lot can happen to people. For instance, I had a guy, he's telling me, he says to me, the last time I went I went to prison for 5 years. He says, when I was going to prison, he says, I literally had my sister at my sentencing, had my father, my mother, and his fiance. He said, I did 5 years. He says, dude, when I got out, he says, in the time I was did that 5 years, he says, my mother passed away, my father passed away. He says, my sister passed away. He said, and then my fiance passed away. He said, when I got out, he says, there was nobody, and he has no other family. That impacted me extremely. I was like, oh my gosh, and so just how it affected my family. I had a friend call my mother and talk to her, and when I talked to him, after I got out, he was very happy that I didn't go to prison, because by the grace of the courts, they gave me a rehabilitation program that was drug court. So yeah, it was tough in there. It was my family. My daughter, I remember I got in a letter slipped underneath the door by one of the correctional officers. That's how they do it. And my cellie said, hey, you got a letter? And I was like, oh, really? So I took this letter, and I remember I looked at it, and at first I didn't realize it. And then I realized it was my daughter's name, and then I opened it up and read it, and, it was this real heartfelt letter. And yeah, that was, quietly cried over that for sure. So, for one thing, it brought me and my daughter back closer together. The addiction took it away, that relationship away, and my incarceration actually had brought it back together, oddly as that sounds. But there are so many things that worrying about how life was going to change, who was not going to be there anymore when I got out, if I got out, because at that point I wasn't sure if I could have went to prison for 20, 30 years over them charges. But like I said, by the grace of the courts, they gave me a program, and yeah.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that you were able to, establish that connections with your daughter and to go to drug court and go that route. It may be, I think I know the answer to this, but so it sounds like at 49 is when all this like for the incarceration started happening. Is that right? Like,
yeah.
So was there a certain, in hindsight, right? Hindsight's always 2020. Was there a point where you could have changed that path, or was it the substance abuse maybe, or like, or what did you need at that time that could have helped you and prevented this, or was it inevitable and this was the, rock bottom you needed to? I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? Was something that could have helped in the situations, or?
Yeah, no, it was definitely my rock bottom. It was a course that I had set for myself that there was no changing it, you know. And other than the change that, so I call it the judge nudge, that's what changed my course. Because once you're in this situation, it is extremely hard to get out. I don't know if anybody there's just been probably, a handful of people I know that's actually been able to go at their own. Unfortunately, it's addiction, it's hard.
For sure. And as someone who's also been there and has also went to 1016, I understand that, and
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense to me. And thank you, one, for sharing, and two, just the bravery to share, because I know that being vulnerable, it takes a lot. So thank you, really. And I guess one last question for me before I pass it back off to Amy is, I want to talk a little bit about like maybe misconceptions people have about the experiences of, being arrested, the process of court, dealing with law enforcement. Can you maybe speak to something? And Rob, feel free to chime in here as well. Do you think there's some misconceptions that that you would like our listeners to know about and be like, actually, that's not the case, or this was this was my experiences? Anything in particular about misconceptions people may have about those experiences you'd like to highlight?
Well, I guess maybe people will look at an addict like maybe they don't have any feelings, they don't care about things and such like that. Addicts have a lot of feelings, they'll stand in front of the mirror for hours and just look at the stranger that's looking back at them, and just wonder where that person that they used to be went to, and not even sure how to fix the situation, they can either, die from it or you reach out for help. But I think sometimes people might stigmatize an addict as, for lack of a better word, a junkie or somebody that just lives on the streets and stuff like that. And that's not it at all. I met a lot of people in my journeys that were addicts, and it's a large segment of society, because sometimes people, you could be, when you go to a store every day and you walk through that store, you're walking past the addicts, functioning addicts. Some of them are very functioning addicts that people don't even realize. It could be a doctor, a lawyer, anybody. You don't know. It's this, but yeah, I'd say the stigma that's out there, but I believe the stigma, it's changing. People are starting to realize more. It's a huge problem. Addiction is.
And I'd love to dig more into some ideas about stigmas associated, for sure. But I'm going to pass it up to Amy now for a little bit, and I think Rob, you're up to the mic now. So
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Aaron, for sharing. So Rob, can you tell us more about the Midland Community Former Offenders Advocacy and Rehabilitation and some of the services that are provided, and what the aim is for these programs and services?
Absolutely. I have a handout that lists the services that we provide. We give that to our clients. And, Aaron was talking about the stigma and stuff. People think that people that are addicted are laying around in the streets and they're dirty and they don't take care of themselves and they're bums and they're, they have no life worth and they, chose this path. And there's a lot of stigma out there. There's people that, as Aaron said, that are functioning every day that we wouldn't have a clue they were addicted. People in the medical profession that have access to stuff, all sorts of different scenarios. So it's not that dirty, unkept guy that's laying in the ditch. It's all over in our community, unfortunately. And it's certainly addiction doesn't go by class or income or status in the community. It just attacks people and they get caught up in it, as Aaron said. And Aaron said he didn't know how to get out of it. So the best thing that happened to him was getting arrested, going to jail, realizing that he was not meeting the needs of the people that were most important in his life, and he needed to get out and take care of his mother. And I tell you honestly, this guy loves his family. He loves that he's sober, and he is a role model that we use. He's going to come and speak at our luncheon this year. I am so proud of the path that he's taken. And I can tell you, when he was arrested, I would have never guessed that he would one day be doing the work that he's doing, that he loves, and that he's compassionate about helping other people with addictions. And I couldn't say more about him. So anyways, back to your question.
Yeah.
We are, one of the things on my handout that I point out to people is that nobody cares how much you know until you show how much you care. And that's what we're all about. We're all about helping, assisting. We do have parameters. We do have guidelines. We are here to help people to help themselves. And if they show us that they're not willing to help themselves, the financial part of what we do for people has to be stopped until they show us that they're willing to have a buy-in to help. Our biggest thing that we do is we mentor people, and we talk to them about the opportunity to have a relationship with God. That is our focus of our program. We are faith-based. I think people come here and they feel a peace. They feel a spirit here that they don't feel in other arenas or in other agencies. We are totally dedicated to former offenders. We're the only agency in this community that is totally focused on assisting former offenders. We work with them with their addictions. We work with them with rebuilding their homes, rebuilding those relationships that are so important for people to have, that give them parameters and stabilization. We're all about cognitive thinking and behavior. I've run numerous programs for different clients as they come in, from Cage Your Rage, nurturing fathers, mothers in need. We have male and female clients, and unfortunately our female client list continues to grow. We provide basic life needs, food, clothing, and shelter. We assist with housing, we assist with transportation, we assist with employment. We buy employment needs such as clothing, shoes, boots, some hand tools. We help, as I said, with transportation through gas cards, dial-a-ride, county connection. Sometimes we drive people if they need to go somewhere. I've done it numerous times. I am transparent as much as Aaron is transparent. I don't have anything that I'm putting in the closet. I'm totally out there as I am with our services. We do have some new programs. For many years, we would get beds for clients when they would transition back in the community. And some of those beds I picked up are like, I wouldn't let my dog sleep on this. I'm not doing this anymore. So I set up a program. Thankfully with Dan, we have an agreement that he'll sell them to us at cost. We pick up new beds. Nobody wants to lay down in somebody else's dirt. We do the same thing with undergarments. I know when I was working in the prison, I spent 2 years in 2 different prisons working, and they would pass on stuff that was other prisoners wore. And I'm like, what are you doing? So when I started this program, I got in a relationship with Blessed Sacrament Church. I go to their ladies' dinners every year, and every year they have tables full of new underwear, socks, t-shirts, those kind of things. I have agencies that make hats and scarves for us at Assumption Catholic Church out on Monroe. We interact with every community assist agency in the county. We basically are a one-stop case management agency for former offenders. And back to Aaron, I got to say this while I am speaking. Aaron and I just talked about this before we started the Zoom. I told him, I said, you know, one of the issues I have with addiction is that people will say, once an addict, always an addict, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. When you've made a change in your life and you've changed your direction, you don't have to carry that scarlet letter around with you. It's your past. It's not who you are. And so part of, and here's a big part of what I do. The Gerry that he was talking about, he is my programs director. He's my best friend. He's my friend in Christ. He did jail ministry for 17 years, and that's where Aaron met him, and probably where he heard about me, or maybe he heard about me in the community. Gerry is a vital part of our organization. I'm in and out. I do all the public relations stuff. Gerry does not like to go out in the community. So I meet with people in the community, and part of what I do, and one of the most important things I do, is educate people about the individuals I work with. These are not people who chose to be in this situation. Many of them came into this world without much chance of succeeding just because of the environment that they were brought into. So Gerry has a heart for these people. I obviously do, and that comes from God. I give him all the glory and all the praise. Gerry and I plant seeds, he waters, and his, the victories are his, they're not mine. I'm here to help people, and I thank him for giving me the opportunity to do so. There is basically not much of anything that we don't do for our clients as far as needs, employment, housing. We also started a new program where we pay for impact weekends for first-time offenders of drunk driving. It used to be a part of their probation. It was absorbed by the court, and now the individuals have to pay for it. If they can't pay for it, they go back to jail. So we have come alongside of them to pick up at least, or not least, but at a maximum of half of the cost of their impact weekend. And we also support both the male and female sober houses in Midland that are part of 1016. 1016 has the structures. MCFOAR pays for people to get in there and pays for emergency rent when they need it. 1016 doesn't fund clients, and so they come to us, and so we help them because that's probably the best place for them to be in their time of recovery.
Thank you. Definitely very comprehensive services to support people and really in their overall well-being and success. I really hear that. Thank you so much.
People come here because they know we care. We're not just here to do this. They actually know that we care about them and we want their life to change, and we're looking out for their best interests, and we're trying to give them a new plan, because I can tell you my plan wasn't very good either. I struggled for 40 years with pain medication, alcohol, and my father died of alcoholism, cirrhosis of the liver when he was 63. It wasn't a pleasant place to be in my own home. So I have a heart for people who have dealt with these kind of issues, and I'm going to be here as long as God allows me to physically be here, or unless he tells me he needs me to do something else for him.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
So, Aaron, I want to circle back to this ideas of stigmas a little bit. So I want to ask you, have you personally had to overcome any either stigmas or prejudices or misconceptions by community members or your family or other people that you had to overcome since, while being incarcerated and since being released as well?
I would say probably the biggest obstacle to overcome was, well, I mean, I would have had to face it, except for the fact is that the 1016 offered me a job. Now, when I was out before that, I was on Indeed.com, and I was out looking for some kind of pretty gainful employment. I was meeting some roadblocks due to my being arrested, what I was arrested for. And since, let's say, not living my best life, I had to go back to school and get a GED, so that was a huge roadblock right there. So I guess probably the employment part, no matter, so I'd spent years working in nursing homes and stuff that myself. And I remember when I went to apply for a job, that's the first thing they asked me, was about my education. So then I realized at that point, I need to do something about this. Other places, they were concerned about my drug offenses, things like that. So I guess, that kind of a stigma to overcome and them kind of barriers was pretty challenging.
I think I can speak on that because I'm out in the community and I hear all of it about those guys, and those people choose that lot in life. Let them deal with it. Why would I support MCFOAR when you're working with people who commit crimes and are a burden on our community, and all they are is a cost to us? And just look at them. See, they choose to be who they are, and they're never going to change. And constantly being judged and looked down upon. I go out in the community and I hear things, like, why are you helping those people? They're just dirtbags. Just let them live in the life that they choose to live in. And this just isn't about addiction. This is about former offenders. And the reality is that none of us are free of sin. The reality is that if they are trying to make a better way in their life, why aren't we supporting that? Why wouldn't we come alongside of them to change that behavior so we have fewer victims in our community? So that Aaron can be successful as a man and as one of God's creations. Why wouldn't I come alongside of him? Instead, I've had police officers that I worked with that have come to me in different community settings and say, what are you doing? Why would you help those guys? Aren't you sick of dealing with those people? There's those people thing again. We take every offender and we put them in a box and say, put the lid on, keep them all in there. And it's not a very good outlook. These individuals, these people, these men and women are trying to change the direction in their life, and they're trying to make better for themselves and for their families. I'm going to come alongside them regardless of what the stigma is or who people think they are, or that they're sitting in judgment of them. I know who I'm dealing with. I know who truly wants to get away from that. And as I told Aaron before we talked about that scarlet letter, you don't have, here's what people will do. Well, he's a felon, or he's an offender, or, do you know what that guy did? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to give them the opportunity to make a change. They say, let them stay where they are. That's their life choice. So let them be. The fact is that they're here in our community, and somebody needs to reach out to them or be available to them to help to change the direction. And obviously they have to be a part of that plan also. But I fight these stigmas every time I go into a community, whether it's a faith community, whether it's just in the general public, to promote our program and what we're doing for people. And I can tell you that when I first started this 11 years ago, it was like pulling teeth. I mean, nobody wanted to come alongside of what we were doing. And it was because of those people that you're representing. We're talking about, I'm competing for funding between a women's shelter and, taking care of young children in our community. And here's these former offenders. We kind of know where we're at in that list, right? So I just have to keep educating people and pursuing. And it's not the case now. I think we've been around long enough and we've impacted enough. And I can tell you this, our recidivism rate is the lowest of any county in the state of Michigan. And I don't take all the credit for that. I give that to God, but rest assured, before MCFOAR, we were averaging about 47% of recidivism rate in the 2-year period. Everyone that came to us from prison was, half of them were back in prison within 2 years. Last month when I ran that report, it was 3%. It's just amazing. And I believe that MCFOAR is a big part of that recidivism rate because we meet with people where they're at. We go on the, as they say, we get on the ground with them and work through their issues and work through their problems and tell them that they're worthy and that they need to be respected and they need to give respect. And like I said before, this is the best thing I've ever done. And as long as God wants me to continue to do it, I'm going to continue to be here. And I'm fully content and at peace with our program and who we represent. We represent individuals. They're not convicts. They're not those guys. They're not, he's a jailbird, he's a druggie, he's an addict. That stuff is never spoken in our office. It doesn't happen. And if it does, I take care of it quickly.
Yeah. And Rob, you know that I also work in corrections, actually in a community correction program that has an alternative approach. And so I can really relate to what you're saying here in terms of just opening up the lens on how the community can support people who have been through these experiences, these choices, which resulted in incarceration. With respect to the criminal justice system and what MCFOAR offers, what do you have to share about what we could do to reform the time that an inmate spends incarcerated and or afterwards in the community as a community? And this goes for either one of you if you'd like to share.
I think I can speak on that. I have a lot of experience with dealing with judicial reform. I just was at a meeting in Lansing a couple months ago for prison reform. I have been obviously close to this. I've been working with offenders for 43 years, either in enforcement or advocating for them. I choose this over the other. Anyways, I know about these things. I was around when Brooks Patterson was the prosecutor in Oakland County and came up with all of these tough on crime and Proposal B and minimal sentencing and intermittent, or what they call it, having a minimum sentencing and gosh, I can't think of the word. It's evading me right now. So let me just speak on a couple things in Michigan. We are one of 5 states in the United States that do not give good time to prison inmates. We are one of 4 in the United States that has no rehabilitation in the prison system. Michigan sentence people to longer incarceration than any state in the United States. Our initial incarceration is longer for the same offenses than any other state in the United States. Our system is broke. We have to realize that if we take someone into our prison system and we don't do anything for them except incarcerate them, I don't know why anyone would think that when they come out, they're going to be a better person or a better individual. They come out angry. They come out feeling like they're less than a person. And then it's our responsibility to build them back up and let them know that they have self-worth. That's what we try to do here. And a lot of people don't want to hear about that, but it's the truth, and I only speak truth. I know the statistics. I know how it operates. I can tell you this, though, in this community, with the help of all of the other communities and the strong help we receive from the faith communities, we're on a good path. My prayer is that I can close the doors at MCFOAR. No, we're not needed anymore in this community. Unfortunately, that's not today. And I should tell you also that there's not another program like ours in the state of Michigan.
Yes, I've actually heard from some people who are experiencing the incarceration who are like, what? That program is there?
That's for sure. Well, as we wrap up today, I had just one final question for both of you, and that would be, what would be your final message to our listeners today?
For me, real quick, for the recovery aspect, it's not just recovery, it's recovery and wellness. That means physical wellness, emotional wellness, financial wellness, just things like that. Because if you can tie that all in together, I mean, then you become a functioning and contributing member of your society, then there's nothing better feeling than being able to contribute to your community in a positive and constructive way instead of a destructive way. Once people start doing that, I tell you, it takes them a long way in what they want to do in life, their recovery and stuff like that. So.
Excellent. Rob?
Yes, sir. This is a big question for me because I'm about this, as you probably can see. And I think Amy already was aware of that. I just want people to know that they can come here and they can feel a different peace here, a different spirit. They know that Gerry and it actually matters to us if they're successful, if they have a plan, if they're following that plan. And we are open to anyone in the community that has a criminal history that we can help and we can assist. And we don't do this because it's a job. We do it because we love people. And I know from my experience, if we don't reach out to them, we better plan on locking them up. We better plan on keeping them locked up. And that's why our recidivism and our numbers were so high in the state of Michigan, as well as our community. And I don't want that. I don't want people to live in fear. I don't want our clients to go back out and re-victimize people in the community. I want them to be whole people and have a chance at success. And our job is to encourage and build them up, and we're going to continue to do that.
Well, thank you both for your messages, and honestly, thank you both for sharing your story. Aaron, thank you for being vulnerable and telling your story, and Rob, for all you do for Aaron and our community and what you both do. So thanks for being here. It's really been an honor getting to know you both and hearing your story. And Amy, that was fun.
You can stay connected with the Visibility Project by subscribing, liking, and sharing on your favorite podcasting and social apps. Look for us at the Visibility PRJ.
Financial support is needed to keep the conversation going. Go to midlandfoundation.org/give and select the Cultural Awareness Coalition Endowment Fund to be part of the project. Note podcast in your donation notes.
Thank you for listening.
We see you.
We hear you.
And together, we are making a difference.